Hello, welcome back. Guess who is in the news again? That's right, you guessed it. Sweet Baby Inc. And it seems like they've doomed another game. Now let's check it out.
This game Unknown 9 Awakening, and how it was another giant failure.
Unknown 9.
So
okay.
about a month ago, we talked about this game Unknown 9 Awakening, and how it was another giant failure associated with Sweet.
Yeah, I remember this game. This was a game where you're playing as some Indian girl that gets like a bunch of magical powers. It seemed interesting, to be completely honest. It did not seem like a bad game. So
Baby Inc. Kim Belair having been credited for working on the game, as well as David Bedard at Reflector, the dev studio behind Unknown 9 Awakening, who's also a co-founder of Sweet Baby Inc. So founding members of Sweet Baby Inc. have worked on Unknown 9 Awakening, and let's get a brief refresher of how that game's been doing before we take a look at the further news regarding this update.
You know what's sad is that I'm sure there are games out there that are good, but have been tainted, for lack of better words, by the Sweet Baby Inc. curse. And a lot of people are just immediately going to X those games out of their life immediately just because it has Sweet Baby in it. So I really hope that this is going to serve as a cautionary tale for the future.
Hopping over to SteamDB. As of recording right now, there are currently 22 people in-game.
That hurt? Shit. 22 people in-game? Oh, I'm so sorry. I guess you're gonna remain unknown.
Playing Unknown 9 Awakening on Steam. Review score sitting at 33.47%. Astronomically terrible, as well as the player count, of course. And the all-time peak player count is also awful, having achieved
all-time peak 200. That's worse than Concord. Damn, that's gonna be rough.
285. To call this game a flop might even be generous. And I don't just say that because of the terribly performing game itself, but everyone associated with Unknown 9 Awakening, from Reflector, Sweet Baby Inc., and even Bandai Namco, seemed to have thought that this would be a great, highly successful new intellectual property, as they were making their own cinematic universe of sorts, including various comic releases.
Okay, so they had a bunch of comics, Unknown 9 Awakening, and then they're gonna have Unknown Torment, and then Genesis. Oh my god, a scripted podcast, a web series, another podcast, and then Torment Season 2, and then Ascension, a novel. Now, I don't have an issue with wanting to make a cinematic type universe, but shouldn't you at least put out your first product, see if people are interested in the product, before you start pouring your investments into an entire expanded franchise? I don't know, call me crazy.
To go along with the game, and even a web series and scripted podcast. Oh, and also some novels, as you can see here. Got this whole thing lined up. So like, let's just take a minute to just let this all sink in, man. Like, holy smokes, dude. This reminds me of Concord, right? Like, didn't the Concord people think that this was going to be like a long-term, like, Star Wars level successful IP?
Concord was said to be the future PlayStation. They said it was a Star Wars-like project. There were big multimedia plans between the cinematic and inclusive in things like Amazon's Secret Level. Again, bro, put out the product first, see if the people are interested, and then expand your franchise. It's insane to me that people are thinking of expansion before they've even learned to walk or learned to run. Okay, baby steps, guys. I mean, the company's called Baby Inc. Sweet Baby Inc. Baby steps.
IP, and they had like all these like huge ambitions for Concord. I mean, this is a similar thing here with Unknown 9 Awakening. Obviously, far less money spent on this than Concord, and I don't believe Sweet Baby Inc. was involved with Concord at all. I'm simply comparing how both have flopped entirely, and of course, there's also similarities in things like DI policies with the games, and also out of touchness and tone deafness from the people involved with both games. The point is, it's just funny to me, the similarities. It's really astonishing when people defend Sweet Baby Inc. They always cite like two successful games that they worked on, that being Ragnarok and also Spider-Man.
Okay, nobody knew about Sweet Baby Inc. when Ragnarok came out, and people were hella mad about Angrboda being black, which, I mean, I understand. But when you look at the bigger picture, they're gods. They rule the world. Shouldn't they be every color? Regardless of that, I understand that people were upset with Ragnarok, and the reason why Ragnarok did so well is because they were an established IP and people didn't know about Sweet Baby. Spider-Man 2, same thing as well. Established IP, not a lot of people knew that Sweet Baby was a part of Spider-Man, but look at what the complaints are. Too many MJ missions. Why is Angrboda black? Why are there freaking Ironwood, right? The biggest complaints that you would have about Ragnarok and Spider-Man are definitely sectors that people could at least assume Sweet Baby Inc. had a hand in. Oh.
And the defenders conveniently never talk about the numerous, growing list of like extreme failures that Sweet Baby Inc. has worked on. And another point that I've brought up before is Ragnarok and Spider-Man had giant teams working on those.
I'm listening, but I'm looking at the combat. Okay, let's just look at the combat real quick. I'll mute it here. This looks like Assassin's Creed back on the PS2. This game looks like garbage, and it's coming on the PS5. That's insane to me.
Had giant teams working on those games. In other words, SBI's involvement was probably kept at a minimum. But the games that have like far smaller teams, and therefore likely far more involvement from Sweet Baby Inc., tend to be these like huge flops, man. And now in this situation, I haven't even finished everything because turns out Reflector is going through layoffs. Similar to Zhao, who worked with Sweet Baby Inc., who then had layoffs and then shut down their entire games division, it looks like Reflector is currently going down that same road. As that takes us to Eurogamer, who says, Unknown 9 Awakening developers report layoffs. Reflector Entertainment's debut launched last month.
Well, what do you expect, okay? You're working with Sweet Baby Inc., and basically every game that's come out in the past year has been a huge warning to any developer. If you work with Sweet Baby Inc., people are not going to play your game based on the fact that you work with Sweet Baby Inc. Period. It doesn't matter if your game is good or not. Developers, and I've said this in so many of my videos before, and I'm just repeating myself now, stop focusing on inclusivity and start focusing on making a good game. Why does this game look like it could be played on the PS3? And it's coming out on PS5. That is insane, okay? And it's not an art choice. It's not an art choice. Allocate your resources to the correct departments and to the correct assets that you want to make money. If you want to have a character be brown and be a woman, go ahead. I don't care. Well, why does the game look like ass? People are going to see this and automatically be like, oh, they wasted their money investing in some dumb bullshit. And that's why the game looks like ass, so it probably plays like ass too. Stop focusing on inclusivity.
And already they are now laying people off. Staff members who worked on Unknown 9 Awakening report layoffs across the team at Canadian outfit Reflector Entertainment. Jobs lost include roles within Reflector's art, marketing, narrative, and quality assurance teams. Game developer reported Unknown 9 Awakening launched last month to mixed reviews. On Steam, where it sits with a mixed rating, less than 100 players have rated the game. The game was also meant to act as a central point. Unknown 9 Awakening.
How could you have mixed reviews at 100 players, bro? I post YouTube videos and I get like 400 reviews and it's mostly positive. It's insane to me that at 100 you could have mixed reviews.
The cross-media brand. Just this week, a second season of Unknown 9 Out of Sight tie-in podcast was launched, while the fourth issue of its graphic novel series Unknown 9 Torment arrived. There's also a web series, Unknown 9 Passage, which you can go watch on YouTube. We also have a quote that reads, "Unfortunately, I was affected by the layoffs at Reflector Entertainment, which means I'm currently looking for a job as a narrative designer or game writer. If you hear of any opportunities, please let me know," one staff member who lost their job wrote. Eurogamer has contacted Bandai Namco for comments. They had also mentioned that the protagonist Haruna was played in the final game by Anya Shalatra, aka Yennefer in Netflix's The Witcher. And it was the first project from the Montreal-based Reflector, co-founded by former Assassin's Creed Unity creative director Alexandre Amancio. Returning to David Bedard, you may have noticed that he had also worked over at Ubisoft, seemingly Ubisoft Montreal. There's a recurring theme with a lot of these consoles.
Oh, Ubisoft Montreal, you mean the people who have been putting out the garbage, repetitive Assassin's Creed game time after time after time? And guess what? This game looks like a PS3 Assassin's Creed. Big fucking surprise, your game isn't doing well. Sweet Baby Inc. Ubisoft looks outdated. Bravo, man. You played yourself.
Firms like Sweet Baby Inc. and others that they are based out of Canada. And it does seem like a number of the people working there do indeed have ties back to Ubisoft. A top comment on our Kotaku in Action discussing this news would say, I would have loved to be a fly on the office wall with the people in charge when the sales numbers for those novels and comic books started coming in.
I can't even imagine.
What sales numbers? The response reading, it's highly regarded. Why don't they do any market research and playtesting? Spend 5 minutes on YouTube and you'll see this is not a winning strategy. Virtue signaling may get you a lot of clicks, but it won't get you sales. To be quite frank,
because like think of the type of people that are actually virtue signaling. The people that are spending time virtue signaling online are probably not the people that are buying your games. They're probably not the people that are dumping God knows how much money in collector's items, in memorabilia, in cosplay. They're not the people doing that. You know who's doing that? The people playing your games. And the people who are playing your games do not like virtue signaling. Not complicated. Very simple, actually. Virtue signaling, bad. Not virtue signaling, good. Make money here. No money over here. Now, if any of you executives are looking to hire a consultant, my name is Isaac.
All of this stuff is extremely bizarre. Like, you would imagine that they would care about sales, but then they talk about they being Sweet Baby Inc. employees having been on record talking about wanting to burn the gaming industry to the ground. On top of that, we've seen how a number of these consultation firms and their associates have been grifting off of government money, attempting to use DI as a way of achieving ESG metrics, which helps them secure said funding. It's all extremely bizarre and corrupt, and clearly these people really shouldn't be in the gaming industry. They have no passion for games or gamers. As a matter of fact, lack of passion is an understatement. A lot of these people flat out despise gamers. So let me know what you think about all of that Sweet Baby Inc. and Unknown 9 Awakening stuff, and we've got one more thing to take a look at here.
I really don't understand. How could you hire a gaming consult company that goes on record and says, I want to destroy the gaming industry. I want to burn it down. Like, just use 1% of your brain. Would you ever hire a doctor that said, I hated delivering children? He hates it. You wouldn't. You wouldn't hire a farmer that says, I love pesticides, right? And you definitely wouldn't hire a mechanic that says he hates getting his hands dirty. So why would you hire a company that goes out and says they want to burn down the gaming industry? This is what you call a recipe for disaster. God damn it, it's not complicated.
As I've had a lot of people tagging me and mentioning the situation in my comments, asking me to cover this, so let's take a look. Ollie Barter had said, Sony is in talks to buy Katakawa. And by the way, thank you all for the tags and comments. Now let's take a look at what he says here over on Forbes. In a pretty astonishing piece of news, it seems that Sony is in talks to buy Katakawa. According to Reuters, Sony is thinking of buying Katakawa, which would have massive ramifications for both games and anime. From a gaming standpoint, the big acquisition would be From Software, of which Kadokawa has a controlling stake as of 2014. Admittedly, Sony...
I really hope Sony doesn't start messing up From Software games, because From Software games have been the breath of fresh air that I've needed year after year, and I just need them to not mess it up. However, if you guys are going to make Bloodborne 2, then by all means, go ahead.
Sony already has a small chunk of FromSoft, along with Tencent, but this new setup would put Sony much more directly in charge. Considering Microsoft's recent acquisition of Activision, it makes sense that Sony would go after a company like FromSoft via Kadokawa. Sony has had a long-standing relationship with FromSoft, going back to the 90s and the original PlayStation, so in theory, this could be a good matchup. However, my only concern with this is that the Japan studio at Sony was gutted recently. Okay, yeah, hold up, let's talk about that really quick. So, back in 2021, yeah, Sony essentially shut down Japan studio. Now, people often meme around with varying levels of seriousness that Sony isn't even a Japanese company any longer. And Sony gutting or shutting down Japan studio, however you want to phrase it, certainly does seem like a symbolic representation of that being the case. They attempted to justify this action by essentially saying that the studio just wasn't profitable enough anymore. And then what do they do a few years later? Get involved with Concord, losing about $400 million. Now, of course, a lot of stuff has occurred throughout all of this. This is just like a few brief points, but oh my gosh, dude. So we left off here. However, my only concern with this is that Japan studio at Sony was gutted recently, and the same thing could happen under Sony to FromSoft. That would obviously be awful. The other side of this is Kadokawa's anime and manga output. Sony already has Crunchyroll and Aniplex, so buying Kadokawa would bring a huge amount of IP across anime and manga under Sony's roof.
maybe if Sony buys Kadokawa, we could finally start getting some actually good anime games. Because I love anime. I just wish anime games were better, right? I would love to play a action adventure One Piece game where I get to make my own pirate and choose my own devil fruit or something like that. That sounds amazing to me, right? Like a story-driven One Piece game where you're not playing as Luffy, like you have to build your own crew or something like that. That sounds fantastic to me. Or just name any other anime game. Just having a good anime game where I go through the motions and I have my own story, that would be fantastic. So I wouldn't be super opposed to them buying those IPs.
Kadokawa also has a sizable chunk of the Western anime press, having bought Anime News Network and owning Bookwalker, who run GX Plus. Yeah, well, Anime News Network and Sony, they would go perfect together, hand in hand, if you get that joke. The joke being Anime News Network's terrible reputation. It's a lot of stuff we could talk about regarding that, but I'm not going to bury the lead at the end. The article would conclude saying, in short, this is a lot to take in and would have a dramatic impact across games and anime, not only in Japan, but also globally. Yeah, so I do think this would be pretty terrible stuff. Sony have an increasing grip, infesting their hands onto FromSoft even more. And clearly also not a good thing for the anime industry, in my opinion. We'll see how things continue to develop, but let me know what you think about all of this news, the Unknown 9 Awakening stuff, and this Sony stuff at the end of this video. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please consider liking and or subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.
That was a pretty informative video, boys. I really enjoyed that one. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Does Sony have any business buying Kadokawa? Is Sweet Baby Inc. a flag of death? Let me know in the comment section down below. While you're down there, like, share, favorite, subscribe, all that good stuff, because we're on the road to 400. And if you don't want to help, well, remember, at the end of the day, I'm just some guy on the internet, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace. If you want to see more of my face, be sure to click the video you see on the screen right now.